All right, welcome back, everyone. Welcome to our regular viewers, and thank you for joining us for the fifth episode of our third season. If you're new to our podcast, as always, we want to share that you're a new peer, ally, or new to the workforce. We're so glad that we found you. This podcast is for behavioral health clients and consumers, advocates, allies, peer support workers, community health workers, and community stakeholders where we talk about advocacy, recovery, peer support, and provide education related to legislative changes to statewide policy to empower you as a client, consumer, or ally to lift up your voice as a stakeholder in the public behavioral health system. With me today are my amazing Access Program teammates. I've got Jocelyn
I'm Jocelyn.
And I'm
and
Nicole, the other one.
And we also have the pleasure of visiting with Angel Mercado, who works for Painted Brain in Los Angeles. Angel brings a consistent source of inspiration and compassion wherever she goes. And so, appropriately today, we'll be discussing the intersectionality of compassion with peer support, recovery, and advocacy.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be with you.
So excited to have you here with us, Angel. And before we dive into the content, just so we can help others get to know you a little bit better, what's something small in your daily life that consistently brings you joy?
I love that question. I think something that comes to mind in terms of something that brings me joy, either some sunshine and like especially when the weather is nice. Right now it's a little bit too hot for my liking, but just like enjoying some nice weather. I like looking out and just noticing like the clouds, hear the birds. Sounds very like mundane maybe, but it is like very relaxing and of course like I really love my little sister, Esther. We spend so much time together, and just like sharing time with her, connecting with her is always a joy.
Oh, that's wonderful. And that sort of leads me into my next question for you, just getting to know you a little bit better. So, as we introduced and as your wonderful background shows, you are with Painted Brain. We would like to know if you could share a little bit about your story and your lived experience and how that's impacted you professionally in your role at Painted Brain.
Definitely. Thank you. Thank you, Nicole. I think something that comes to mind when it comes to my story, I've actually had to, figure out what is the difference between like my story and my family's story. And I think that's kind of like part of the seed as to why I think compassion is such a cool topic. But, a little bit more on that later. In terms of my story, I think for myself, what I conceptualize is I was raised by my grandparents on my dad's side. Both of my parents were 19 when they had me. They were navigating their addiction. My grandma was super loving and at the same time very, very intense. So I knew what it was like to uh, be favored and at the same time feel a little bit forgotten or put under scrutiny. I described the feeling growing up where it always felt like I was never just like at the table. I was either like put on a pedestal or I was nothing. Like, and it sounds a little bit dramatic, but genuinely like when it came to like family dynamics and I happened to be a trans person and at school, like I had people that would be like, "Oh, like you're really smart," but then like I'd be bullied for being like overly effeminate for like a little boy at the time and things of that nature. So I think I dealt with a lot of like criticism, abandonment, but also a lot of love and a lot of joy. Um, Once again, like my grandparents raised me, my mom's mom has always like pursued a relationship with me. So like I don't want to just harp on like the negatives of my life, but I do think that they deeply, deeply shaped me. But I will say also just like that love and that kindness, that warmth that I felt also was, deeply nurturing and I think allows me to channel like softness as I like go back into my healing process now that I'm older. Um, In terms of my lived experience, more specifically with like mental health and substance use, um, with substance use, like it's once again more of like my family. I'm happy that my family is healthy. Like my mom and my dad are in recovery. My grandmother was addicted to prescription medicines, and she's also I don't think she knows that she's in recovery, but she's like practicing a life of recovery, which is beautiful. And for myself, when I was 19, I had a mental health breakdown, and I can only describe it as having a complete like out of body experience, and everything felt like a blur. I didn't know what was real, what was not real, what was going on around me, and it was very, very scary. Um, as I shared, my mother didn't raise me, but when I had that mental health crisis, I looked out for help. I called my mom, and that's kind of the start of my recovery journey. So I've done anything from like support groups. I've had some really great therapists, some bad ones along the way too. I recently started my journey with psychiatry. So um, uh, I'd say if I had to put it in a nutshell, I'd say healing relational trauma is one of the biggest components to my mental health, navigating anxiety and things of that nature. In terms of how it's affected my work at Painted Brain, um, my grandmother that raised me always said that when you're out in public or just like out and about, like try to be like a little bell. And she speaks Spanish. She would say, suena como una campanita. And it's just like a chime like a little bell is basically the phrase. And she was always very joyful, even though she would be a little bit intense at home. I saw how, she would smile in public, and like she was just such a joy to like random individuals on the street. And I think that really has impacted the way that I try to be at Painted Brain. I've also kind of channeled like how to be a professional from like watching my mom. I think it's super cool, like listening to her testimony when she shares at different groups, or like watching her be a professional within the peer world. So I hope that answers the question. I probably could go a little bit deeper on how it impacts my role at Painted Brain, but I think those two things are the things that stand out the most. I've been really blessed to have some beautiful role models, and I try to do my best to connect with those that also feel forgotten at times, and show them the warmth that I also was able to feel.
Definitely, Angel. Every time we're in a room in a space with you, even virtually, we can feel it. We can feel that love and that positivity. And now every time we're together, I'm going to think of that bell. And um, you really do are a walking just person in this world who brings so much sunshine. And thank you so much for sharing your experience and your lived expertise that you're bringing into your role to be able to meet individuals where they're at. And like you said, if there's folks out there feeling forgotten, individuals like you really make anyone feel so special and welcomed. And so we're really grateful to be able to talking about this with you. And we want to be able to dive in a little bit more. Would you be able to share a bit about your organization and your program, including what community and population you're serving, and how do individuals get involved so they can get to know Angel?
Yes, I'm so excited. Thank you. Thank you, Nicole. We do a little bit of everything at Painted Brain. I almost envision like a tree with so many different branches. Part of the reason we're called Painted Brain is because we do a blend of arts and mental health. I'd say a little bit more of the branch that I'm a part of and focused on is our education sector. So we do the 80-hour peer support specialist training, which I've been doing for the past like maybe like 4 to 5 years now, which is super, super cool. Um, and for that, for folks that may not be familiar, in order to be able to bill Medi-Cal for your peer support services, you need to go through an 80-hour training with an approved vendor. So Painted Brain is one of them. There's many others. You would take a training, you get your certificate, and then you can apply to take your exam. And then when you pass, you become a Medi-Cal certified peer supporter. But I also do other things. We have other grants with different counties. We completed this beautiful training up in Richmond. I believe it was with Contra Costa County, and we were teaching advocacy to our Latino population. Um, well, I taught the Spanish courses, but we had English and Spanish courses. So it was a blend of communities. We're talking about peer leadership and peer advocacy. I believe with San Mateo, we have some courses coming up. We're also involved with PADS, the Psychiatric Advanced Directives. Right now, there's an 8-county collaborative, 8 counties that have opted in to promote psychiatric advanced directives in their area. A little tidbit just about what that phrase means. A psychiatric advance directive is a document that you can fill out before you go into mental health crisis that describes your preferences for care. Who do you want contacted? Who do you not want contacted? Medications that are helpful to you or not helpful to you. So we do a little bit of everything. We also do a lot of digital literacy, education. We have a beautiful community center where we host events. Um, we have a cool social media as well at the Painted Brain if folks are interested in. Um, I might be missing a little bit. I think the second half of the question, if I could get a little reminder.
Yeah, the community and population that you're serving and how to get involved.
Yes, beautiful. I would say pretty much everyone, like any individual that identifies like as a peer, even if you're interested like in the arts, we do have, of course, like our peer focus, but I believe that in some way, shape, or form, we've probably navigated our mental health journeys and our trauma. So our doors really are open to all. There are specific programs that are meant for certain individuals. Like we had a Justice Involved grant, which was beautiful, and we had folks that were Justice Involved, I believe, create art. And then at the community center, we had artist showcases. Um, but yes, open to all. And I think the best way for anybody to get connected with us, two things would be we promote a lot of our events on our social media. I want to shout out Alina Joffrey as part of our team. She does such an excellent job with our social media. And in terms of training specifically, our Painted Brain website, I believe it's thepaintedbrain.org. We have our class schedules, our programs that we have going on, and the hours that our community centers open. So that's open to all. Sometimes some are a little bit more specific than others, depending on the grant. And definitely those social media and our website are our best ways to get in contact.
Thank you, Angel. Yeah, thanks for sharing about your work. And you absolutely just exude and embody, I know, everything that Painted Brain stands for, everything that the peer workforce is about. So just love hearing more about that work from you. So kind of tying that work together with what you shared about compassion, that intersection. Um, can you share what compassion means to you? Who taught you the most about compassion and what did they teach you? And I know you've shared a lot about your grandmother and just the incredible role model and mentor that she was. So if you want to elaborate more on that, or maybe if there's other individuals in your professional journey, just anything else you want to share about your story, and learning about compassion along the way.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Jocelyn. Um, I think what compassion means to me is the active process of trying to understand others, and as generalized or as generic, I think is the word that I was looking for. As generic as it may sound, truly like trying to meet others where they're at. Um, I wasn't originally planning on emphasizing on my grandma when I first read this question, but Jocelyn, when you mentioned it, I was like, wait, you know what? This really is that full circle moment where um uh specifically like the relationship that I had with my grandmother was one where like I believed that she really loved me. I knew that she really loved me, but growing up, she didn't always treat me very well. And it's very confusing because we hear like if people love you, they treat you well and this and this and this. And of course, like absolutely, like I really want to honor like I was navigating like abuse growing up, and when one is navigating different forms of abuse or domestic violence, like we should not stay in those situations, if that's a choice that we're wanting to make. So the difference, or kind of something that I want to get into is that when I moved with my mom, when I had my mental health breakdown, um, there was one phrase that I saw. She had a little framed picture. It said, like a flower cannot bloom in the same soil that made it sick. And I realized that my grandmother loved me greatly, but she didn't know like how to love me. She didn't have the tools to be able to do so. Um, And it made me there was a couple of things that I also went through that helped me understand where, like, the way that I understood the world was maybe like a little bit wrong. Um, I actually navigated my first relationship and then being cheated on and being told like, like like you're not the problem. Like I just wanted to do what I wanted to do, but this has nothing to do with you. And at first that sounded so dismissive, but then those words really like clicked in and it made me realize, well, this partner that I love and really cared about mistreated me. And it really is true. Like even though what he might have said at first, one layer of it was dismissive, the second layer of it, I found like truth within. Like, yes, sometimes people do what they do, and it's not about me. It's not that I'm not doing enough of something or like too much, or it's not that I'm like flawed. Sometimes it's just like people don't know what to do with themselves. Sometimes people do things for other reasons. And the blend of like navigating that first relationship and kind of like navigating that like betrayal trauma in a sense and navigating my relationship with my grandmother. I think these two things fused together as well as understanding like my mom was able to recover when she was in a different environment as well, and I saw myself in her in that way. It's like, wow, in certain environments, we may only have certain choices to choose from. But when the environment changes, we can see that people's choices can also change. And when we're able to have better choices to choose from, I believe in uh, human goodness, and that if people can choose better, they will choose better. When I think of compassion, I just think of how I've been able to do that with my grandmother. Like she was a very intense person, and I've connected with her, worked through things with her, and without um imposing like my spiritual thoughts on others, I always like to share like higher power, God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, to me has been proved real to be able to see in one lifetime. My grandmother going from so deeply vicious in some ways and also so loving, just so hot and cold, to being able to say like, Angel, forgive me, like I failed you. Like when you had your mental health breakdown, I was the adult. I should have been there for you, but I wasn't, and I'm sorry. Like, compassion to me is like understanding that people sometimes are as good as their circumstances, even if they would want to do better or be better. And compassion is the action of helping people get to be who they want to be. And sometimes, like, teaching folks how to show up for you better. Um, So apologies for going all different directions. It's when I think of compassion, it's the, how do I say, like almost like the theme of my life. So when I think of compassion, I really think of all the different things I've had to experience, like highs and lows, in order to find like that peace. Um, But yeah, hopefully not too sage-like, but I love to pass it back over.
No, I think you captured compassion beautifully. And thank you very much for sharing your journey towards compassion because I think you're right. I think it's hard when we're in a situation that's traumatizing for us to take that break and be compassionate and say, and yes, sometimes it takes, a couple months and you're like, oh, wait, wait, yes, there were other things going on, right? Um, and so I really appreciate that. I've also had a similar journey towards compassion as yourself. So we share in that. What I'm kind of interested in, I can sort of hear from your stories and whatnot, compassion being very important to you. Can you talk a little bit about what inspired it as a topic for today's podcast?
Definitely. Thank you, Nicole. I think what comes to mind is one, I loved getting to know all three of you and connecting. I believe that our last convening, I got a chance to meet Nicole S. And um, I think one, um, it's such like a lighthearted topic. I think it has like a lot of how do I say? Like a lot of power, but like it's kind of like when I think of the word joy, I think of something that's very impactful, but also something that feels good. And when I think about the word compassion and imagining like what it would be like to share time and space like with the three of you. Like this is like a topic that one I just really would, would wanted to get into with this team in particular because I feel like genuinely the three of you are such beautiful people and I've gotten the joy to connect with you over the years. So it's like wow, like um uh, I don't always get a chance to share too much on this topic, but when I've shared it with you, I've always like it always like flows naturally. So that's one component of it. I'd say another component would be um I just find it so necessary. Like if I was like, you know, I think of the Miss America when it's like, if you could do one thing for the world, what would you do? Or like, what would you end? Like, I would just genuinely try to inspire like compassion within others. Um, I believe I found a completely different way of existing once I've found ways to bring compassion into like my life, my heart, my mind. Like, there is so much suffering and thinking that people are mistreating me because my faults or people don't love me or don't care about me. I think, but I say this with I statements, but I think that's, sentiments that many of us, if not all human beings in some way, shape, or form can relate to. And um once again, not to elaborate too much on my family, but like with my grandmother, I had to go back and ask uh like why was she the way that she was? And then I thought about the stories that she shared with me about my great grandmother, and I met my great grandmother, and I knew that she became a mother when I don't think she necessarily wanted to be a mom. I don't think she wanted to be married even. I think she wanted to be more free. And when I think of a woman that has experienced that life and then raising children, it makes sense as to why she might have mistreated my grandmother and why my grandmother had these wounds. And so, like, the reason I share kind of this thread is because I was carrying the pain of my perspectives. Like I wasn't good enough for grandma, or I wasn't like special enough to my parents, or X, Y, and Z. Anything that we might feel in this world as like we're faulty or defective, or we've been rejected for X, Y, or Z reason. When we zoom out and see the bigger picture, and to me, compassion is that, like being able to zoom out, to have compassion for oneself, I believe is to realize no, it's not that you're broken. It's that there's so many other factors going on. And if you're able to zoom out and see things with a little bit more clarity and right-sized perspective, that suffering can end and that healing can begin. So I can go from hurt to Grandma, I see that you, as a little girl, were abused, and that matters to me. Like, I love you and I thank you for putting my socks on. And always, when I was going to elementary school, she would always iron my shirts and little things like that. Like, Grandma, I see the pain that you went through. And I know that we've discussed like the hurt that you've caused. That doesn't detract from the love that I feel for you and for the gratitude of what you were able to provide. And in being able to love both sides of her, I get to love both sides of myself. The worries of like, what if I lived a different life? What if my parents raised me instead of my grandma? Like I could have been smarter, better, more beautiful, like all the different things, the what ifs. But it's like to be grateful that I had what I had, to feel compassion for others and therefore feel greater peace within myself. Once again, I probably sound a little bit dramatic, but I mean it very much from the bottom of my heart that it's been like medicine for my mind to find this clarity.
Yeah, Angel, you've got my heart racing right now, and I can connect with you, and I feel like so many of our listeners will um, connect in many ways in what you have shared with us so far about compassion and with your experience within your family and how that has helped shape and create what you are evolving into and what you share and what you bring to this world. And I just again, we're grateful to be able to hear from you, and so thankful that you're sharing this part with us. And so you have shared a lot about what compassion means to you. Transitioning a little bit, can you share from your experience how compassion relates to our work and lives as peers, and especially within advocacy?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Nicole. I'd say the relation between our peer work and compassion, when we think about like the peers that work directly with individuals receiving peer support, I think that compassion is natural in terms of like, um, I think peer supporters are like uh drivers of compassion. Like that's what we're actively seeking how to understand our folks, how to help people live their self-directed lives. Like I think one of the most beautiful gifts that we can give as a human being to another person is supporting someone and remembering that they're worthy of a beautiful life and to encourage them and to, we do everything in terms of like providing resources and connecting and spending time, genuine interest. So like I think in some ways we help people feel loved enough to where they can remember to hold compassion for themselves again. Like, oh, no matter what I've been through, I am deserving of a good life. Like, and I have my peer support specialist. Hand in hand, we're gonna, figure out how we can get back into, the life that I'm hoping to be directed towards. I'd say with advocacy, and this is something that, like, to be quite honest, I still feel um like a heaviness in my heart. Uh, there are individuals like in legislation that have made such poor choices that affect so many individuals in the mo in extremely negative ways, like without hopefully without being like too like intense or controversial. Like I think um people die because of legislation. Like the wrong legislation, the wrong thing being promoted or resources being cut, things that people need to survive. There is, I mean, the way that it impacts family, like individuals and families, our seniors, our youth, like genuinely, like there is so much at stake and it can feel, at least within myself, and I don't expect anybody, I don't want to impose my thoughts or like frame of thinking onto everybody else, but I just say like for myself, the way that compassion helps f- me navigate the concept of advocacy is that I can breathe a little easier and feel more at peace, feel less threatened, feel less anxious when I can believe in my heart that even individuals in legislation that I may see as opponents or as detrimental to our communities, to try to envision what types of lives they've lived or those that have raised them have lived. Like I want to believe that if they had better and other choices to choose differently and act differently, that they would. And I would even say that to be good-spirited is a privilege. Like, I have navigated moments in my life where I've had a vicious tongue. Like I shared, I went from like being bullied to having a very sharp tongue with other individuals. So it's like, I know what it's like to not be fueled by kindness and love and harmony. Like I know what it's like to not be a nice person. And thankfully I had friends that loved me throughout my sharpness and, to be quite honest, in some moments my mistreatment of them. They held me through those moments, and something within me understood like I need to do better and I want to do better. And individuals making choices that negatively impact us, our homes, our families, our neighborhoods, our communities, um, for me, uh, once again, believing that if they had different traits and qualities, if they had the privilege of good-spiritedness and clear sight, that they wouldn't be choosing the choices that they're currently choosing. What I really mean when I'm like describing this is that there can be such a visceral, like, hatred can be born. Like in feeling so frustrated, like you're taking away my livelihood, you're taking away like people's access to healthcare, like those little nuggets that could really inspire like hate and heaviness from individuals being affected to individuals that they're being targeted by. But I feel that like with compassion, I get to remain open-hearted, um, despite the actions of other individuals. Once again, just really honing in on if they could truly do better, they would do better. And that helps me not feel so spiteful when I think about the concept of advocacy. Um, and I hope that that's helpful to like someone, because I know just like it sounds a little kumbaya and like peace in the light, like peace for everyone and things of that nature. But it's hard enough to try to, balance our mental health and our recovery and all the other things. Sometimes our kids, our pets, the rent, the groceries, like why carry that extra chip on our shoulder, even though some individuals are probably the most deserving of these heavy feelings being aimed in their direction. Like it's understandable, but it's like how can we bring back compassion even for our own sanity?
Mm. Yeah, that's so powerful. You're right. Like there, it can be heavy and hard, and there's harmful systems doing harm to individuals, and to be able to take that perspective of compassion, um, can make a huge difference, not just in our own perspective or our own navigating of the situations, but it does have the potential to actually change situations sometimes too, when we're able to extend that compassion and teach others to act in that same way. So can you share about a time when practicing compassion has helped change the outcome of a difficult situation?
I'd say I would even say, like, not to totally like rephrase the question, but I feel like compassion can change any and every situation to be a little bit better, like whether shifting a difficult situation to a smoother one or an already good situation to an even better one. Something that comes to mind is um, particularly particularly when I'm teaching, sometimes there's tension between students, things that arise, and what I try to model is that perspective of compassion. Like, let's take a pause. Let's honor like our individual like feelings. And I know that it's probably something that a lot of peer supporters are familiar with, but that idea of like first validating feelings and then breaking down like what is it that occurred between us, and then like when I think about compassion as an action and like that zooming out, seeing the big picture, when I help my students do that, sometimes when they have tension between each other, helping them zoom out and see the big picture as to why, like, maybe someone's having a bad day, or maybe someone really does have some bias that they need to address. And now let's do the homework to address it because it's not okay for you to speak to other people this way. That's a little nugget that I almost wanted to tie back into the previous question about like practicing compassion and advocacy and like making difficult situations better. Like, I think in both scenarios, I really want to add back in the action component of compassion, where it's not just thinking of people's goodwill, but like the advocacy piece is like, let's do something about it. Even when having, let's just say, like opponents in legislation, you're mistreating me. I think in an ideal world, if you knew how to act, you wouldn't be mistreating me. Somebody has not taught you that lesson so far, so I will use my voice to help you understand that what you're doing is wrong. And like, hey, I deserve rights. Hey, you can't treat people this way. Like, that's, I wanted to like fuse that back in because I realized I focused a little bit too much on just like, oh, like goodwill. And I do believe in the concept of Kantianism. And when we believe in goodwill, like we feel more at peace individually. But also, like when it comes to diffusing difficult situations, I'm trying to think of a couple more like circumstances and situations. But I would definitely say on all levels, like when I'm able to think of someone as more than just the frustration or anger that they make me feel, I chill out. Like I calm down, I can speak with more respect. When I help other folks understand, hey, like I care about you and I genuinely see where you're coming from, or I don't know where you're coming from, but I care about figuring it out. Like, please help me help you. There's just those little strings, I think, are everything we need. Like, people just want to feel cared for. A lot of times we just want to be acknowledged, respected, considered. We don't want to be mistreated. So when we're able to, view things once again, like diffuse ourselves when we think of things with clearer perspective or help others, um, it's easier. Like a collaboration starts to happen. It's like everybody puts down their pitchforks, and it's like, okay, everybody pick up your pencils, let's work on the blueprint together. Um, I'm sure there's like another little like nugget out there that comes to mind that I might add later, but for the most part, that's what comes to mind. Just like it really inspires collaboration when we're able to de-escalate.
And thank you for that, because as we know, being advocates, it can be really frustrating sometimes because systems are slow to change. Um, and people are slow to change, right? Sometimes they hold on to long-standing beliefs and it's really hard, and so compassion, as you're demonstrating, can be something that we can definitely use in advocacy, not only to change minds, but also, have our own calmness, because we don't want to get burnt out. We know the system's slow to change. And you talked about this through various parts of this already. Um, but are there any other ways that individuals can cultivate and practice compassion? not only in the work, but also within themselves. You seem to be demonstrating that to your students as well in your training course. But are there any practical ways that peers can do that, within their work at home? And then can you talk a little bit about like in those frustrating situations where someone sort of got you're like a little cat and they've got your back up, right? Like, and you're just like, oh, how do you get, how do you set the boundary that, to remain compassionate, when you're facing these difficult and tough situations or challenging and harmful systems?
Thank you, Nicole. Such an excellent question. And once again, without imposing my like thoughts on anyone, I did happen to be raised Catholic, and you know, a phrase that I always think of is forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And I mean, I'm very multi-spiritual. I just, once again, I happen to be raised Catholic, so I pick up on things, but I've tapped into a little bit of everything, I'd say. The reason why I highlight that in particular, one is because um I'm not kidding when I say that that's what I've used. Like that genuinely is the phrase that I myself have used in order to breed compassion within myself when thinking of others in difficult circumstances. Um, I shared a little bit about how I was the bully in some people's story. And when I think of myself, I'm like, I am a sweet girl. I don't treat people mean, or like I'm not a vicious, or like that is not who I'd like to be by nature. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. Um, when I'm able to reflect on, wow, I know that I really want to do and be better, and yet in my life, I have failed to do so. I can hold the same hope for others. Like this person that's hurting me, mistreating me, acting, aggressively, they may not want to be the way that they are, but for whatever reason, they feel trapped in doing so. Um, for me, I happen to be a linguistic learner. And the reason why I bring this up, I believe that's like one of the categories that they say. Like something about words like really helps me understand things. I truly believe that if we identify our learning styles and then use, like for example, if we're wanting to learn about compassion, like truly like, if we learn by writing, let perhaps journaling about compassion is something that will most help you integrate that value like within yourself. For some people, they're auditory learners, so like listening to videos that are supportive and helpful, like uh thinking of compassion as a skill, just like any other. Like it's like, oh, like how do we learn things as humans? We learn through our learning styles. How do I apply my learning style to this topic? So that's like, I think that's like another one. And also once again, just like the reason why I share that as well is because I also visualize a lot of things in my head. Um, like there's phrases that stand out to me, and then there's pictures that I see in my head that help me. And there's a movie like Princess Mononoke, and in the very beginning, there's uh, 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 a hog running around, and it's typically like a guardian spirit. They kill it. They realize that it actually had a bullet wound inside of it, and that's why it was acting out of character. And um, if you're not familiar with the movie, it might seem a little bit random or awkward, but the reason why I say that with the forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those that trespass against us is, once again, sometimes like taking the time to pause. And for me, that movie scene helps me visualize and remember. Sometimes people do obnoxious things when they're hurting, like, and bringing lightheartedness as well. Like, sometimes things aren't super lighthearted, so it's harder to reach that place. But if I'm be able to see, like, oh my goodness, this person is approaching me like a big angry bear, but underneath that, I'm sure there's a soft cub. Like, those types of visualizations really help me just like uh feel more open to that individual, like that flow of compassion where it's like, I know generic hurt people, but when we take that like really seriously and when we look at our own faults and how we probably would have done better if we could have, it helps uh it helps almost like reflect that compassion onto like another individual. I think what was the second component of the question that you asked?
It's about remaining compassionate while setting firm boundaries or challenging harmful systems.
Yes, I love that. I love that piece. I think it just goes back into the compassion doesn't mean just like roll over and like let people mistreat you. Absolutely not. Compassion is, I believe in your human goodness. You're not acting with goodness in this moment. I believe that if you knew how to treat me well, you would do so. You're not doing so currently, so I will teach you how to treat me well. And like um there can be passion with compassion. Like it doesn't have to be like this like docile, like just, not saying anything or forgiving people for their, 1,000 mistakes. It's like, you know what? Like if like holding people to a standard, I think is compassionate. Like holding people to their word is like compassionate. Like uh I believe that ideally we'd all want to live in a world where we feel safe around like one another. And if a person's actions are actively inciting hurt towards others, it's like, okay, divert course, let's go back into like something needs to change. And sometimes we need to let people know that what they're doing is not okay. Um, and channel I'll just say for in I statements, like I've learned to try to channel my anger appropriately and also learn to disengage when something is clearly not budging. Then it's like, okay, let me talk to someone that can make an impact. I hope that that's helpful.
Definitely, Angel. And you talked about taking time to pause and reflect on, why things are happening with individuals and de-escalating in situations. Um, are there any other strategies that you can share that you use to facilitate compassion as a bridge between peers, providers, families, and even policymakers?
Say, I don't know if I have too much experience like bridging individuals with policymakers, other than kind of like what I've shared right now in terms of like the way that we even like think of others, setting the stage for a bridge to be born. Um, I think what comes to mind would just be navigating our own personal recovery. Like for me, it's been like navigating my own and like everything that I'm talking about, actually genuinely having it implemented into my life and inspiring others to do the same. Where it's like, yes, talk to like I want to honor like there are some relationships that are beyond saving, like when we've been abused, hurt, mistreated, more than anything, honoring that first and foremost for folks that are at a place where they are interested and that is it is safe for them to engage in the dialogue of like uh hey, I want to like rebuild this broken bridge. Like this like I find for myself being able to communicate being mistreated by my grandmother, um and then like finding healing with her. Like when I share my story, I hope that folks can use it as a blueprint to, maybe talk to like their coworker that they're having a hard time with, or their spouse, their children, like their own grandmothers, their parents. Like, so and nothing too, you know, in depth for that question. I just think like trying to really be open and transparent. Sometimes I'm a little bit too transparent, I think. But I like to share and hopefully it helps people find their way as well.
Well, you've given us so much to think about today, so much to take away, both in terms of um, like practical tools, just learning from your story and your own vulnerability, reflecting on our own lives. So I definitely have a lot to take away from this and reflect on. For our listeners, if they're kind of looking just for one nugget to take away from this episode, what would you share?
It just keeps ringing through my mind. And once again, I don't mean to share it at all, like imposing like religion or spirituality in the way that I understand it, but genuinely like forgiving, forgiving our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Just, um, yeah, like believing in people's goodwill like as much as we can and like genuinely trying to do our best to believe in people's goodwill and hopefully forgive what is forgivable and try to make peace with what we can make peace with.
Beautiful. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here, Angel. It is always such a privilege to talk to you. I know all of us here, every single time we have a conversation with you, we leave just so uplifted and inspired and, wanting to be better and do better and um, be stronger advocates, be more compassionate to those that we interact with. So thank you just for being such a beacon of hope and compassion. And we love getting to talk with you and are so glad that so many others get to hear from you as well. Um, and so speaking of those kind of opportunities, for our listeners here, next up, we've got some events that we were traveling to. And if you want to meet Angel in person, our first event, we are going to be down in LA for a regional workshop on August 5th. So coming up really soon. Angel will be there in Painted Brain. So for our listeners, we would love to have you join. We'll also be traveling throughout the rest of the state over the next few weeks. We'll put that flyer in the description here, so check that out, and we'd love to meet you or see you again at one of these events. If you'd like to join us more virtually, we've got a training coming up. Our next one is August 18th, where we learn more practical skills on how to advocate within your county or community. We'd also love for you to continue to share this podcast with others, people who are interested in learning more about advocacy, peer support, recovery, legislative changes, and statewide policy. And also join us from time to time as we share different calls to action and opportunities to advocate. So thank you for being here with us today, and we will see you next time.
Bye. Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
Thank
Angel.
you.
Thank you guys.
Bye.